Alright, so here we go, guys. Third and fourth place match of our tournament. Gameslayer and Soren Johnson are going to be our two players today, and, well, this map, once again, it looks kind of awkward. Not particularly encouraging toward anything except maybe robotic is what I'd feel on this map. I mean, there's not a lot of water to go around. Things look very awkward on that front. You do have this nice aluminum, carbon, kind of iron right next to each other. Aluminum up here even that you can use, and another patch here. Shouldn't be too much of an issue this game to secure one of those no matter what you are. Whereas Scavenger's looking awkward. You're not seeing a lot of carbon, like 3 of it's right here. It's very low. That's your really your only triangle. Expansive and Scientific, I'm not really feeling either. You could run Expansive here. You could. There's enough open space to kind of use that and get work done with it, but Scientist I'm definitely not seeing. And then there's only 2 silicon tiles, and they actually have adjacency, and one of them is high. So Soren did choose to found Scavenger. Got a little antsy, wanted to get his found done. It looks like Gameslayer had to reposition based on where Soren founded. Soren did a nice job of kind of blocking off a significant amount of iron with that found. And so you can see Gameslayer, he's chosen to just take a couple of low iron tiles for the moment, so he gets those resources immediately. I would not actually be surprised, I'll be honest, to see Gameslayer later take a couple of farther away iron tiles, just so he has plenty of iron available to make steel. But for now, taking the close ones to make sure he has those resources quickly and he can push himself into HQ level 2. Soren is going to be the first one to HQ level 2, just takes extra carbon. He is immediately headed toward that high silicon. He is almost certainly going to secure that. Gameslayer not quite close enough to an upgrade to try and attempt a block. And then Soren's last claim will be headed to just the high water tile. Nothing too surprising, fancy, or complicated about those claims, especially considering that the resources are so limited this game. Alright, Gameslayer has hit HQ level 2 himself, got plenty of claims to go along with that, throwing down a trio of steel mills. Actually, just 4 steel mills going down. That's aggressive. There are power surges available this game. I wouldn't be surprised if Soren takes a very quick detour from what he's doing and punishes Gameslayer for that. Gameslayer does not have a goon squad available for these just yet, and doesn't have the cash for one either anytime soon. Soren could pretty easily identify that and get aggressive against these very quickly.
20,000. 28,000.
Alright, 28,000 claims. Soren wanting to push pretty hard on this one. Doesn't have a lot of debt right now, so that makes a lot of sense, I think. And he also keeps that expansive player from getting too far ahead on claims and getting a fairly ridiculous lead. But what I want to see Soren do right now, he's got the resources for it. I just want to see him sell, like, literally everything. Power surge right here. And go on to win the game from there pretty handily. But Soren's not doing it. He's not getting aggressive against these steel mills the way we've seen earlier in this tournament. He's focusing very much on what he's doing himself. What is happening here? Is that extra claim going out to silicon? He's just establishing a silicon monopoly. That's the first thing he's doing this game. And now it's too late. The goon squad is down for Gameslayer, so power surge, that door has been shut on Soren. It didn't look like he was interested in it anyway, but it could have been a pretty decisive move. Oh, there you go. Too late. Too late, too late, too late. He had it too, I think. It's possible that the black market wasn't open in time for him. That would have come from founding first, that it's kind of your punishment, and I may have missed that, but Gameslayer does get the goon squad up in time regardless, no matter what the cause was. Alright, Soren does have his glass re-secured to make sure he can push to an expansion. Gameslayer actually just bought up a very large chunk of glass. It's really the only place he can effectively fight Soren and force Soren to pay a little bit of extra money here or there. But those combined plays, Soren not identifying that the goon squad was down, Gameslayer making those glass purchases, may have pushed Gameslayer much further back into this game. Just, he's got the upgrade available right now. He's much closer behind HQ level 3 than he was on HQ level 2. And we'll have to see what Soren can do from here to actually utilize both the silicon monopoly he's established and kind of the water advantage that he has from having that high water tile. available. I don't think this one was high. It was high, but it is further away. So just a small edge to Soren for this water. I don't know if that was really worth picking up early in the game. He definitely had other options for what to do with that last claim. Could have put it in aluminum, could have put it in glass, especially once he got this other second claim. Difficult call to say if that was the right decision. For now, though, the glass is making a lot of money. So is the food. Both players really have very attackable tiles right now, and neither player choosing to get aggressive. Ooh, and nanotech pops up. This is a really big... This is a really big auction in a 1v1. You don't really have time to divert into a patent lab to pick it up, but when it pops up in that auction, this thing is make or break, really, for pushing to that majority buyout sometimes. When you can scrap those off-world markets and reclaim all those resources. It can be a pretty big deal. Gameslayer is going to be the one to take that for $24,000. Soren probably just a bit worried about his debt from the day one auction in particular, to push too hard. And Gameslayer is the one who finds the adjacent geotherm plants. He is going to be making plenty of power this game. And that's a nice pickup for him, managing to secure both of those. Soren didn't do anything about them whatsoever. The glass is making Soren a lot of money for the moment, and that's great. Part of that is just because his silicon is making almost nothing, though. So I'm wondering what would have happened if Soren had diverted just one claim to make sure that the double geo was not available for Gameslayer this game. Regardless, Soren is HQ level 4. Gameslayer is pushing there, but doesn't really have the ability to get there anytime soon after going ahead and planting both geotherms, so he is running a little bit behind, and that's going to be his payment for the time being. For these geotherms, Soren tried to take one but got blocked. That's not good for him. He guessed wrong about which geotherm was defended, and he is going to get punished for that, handing a mutiny on over to Gameslayer. So I'm curious, are there other geotherms available on this map? I'm not... Okay, we've got one here. And is that it? Nope, there is another one here. So Soren does have a couple of geotherms still available, but obviously that adjacency bonus is basically an extra geotherm for free. And that's kind of a big deal. I mean, 6 power per second for Gameslayer right now. That is paying off his debt quite rapidly. And it's not beyond the realm of possibility that he might actually make some significant money from power this game. Actually choosing to go for a circuit overload on Soren's reactors. That's interesting. That is a lot of power being consumed. I mean, that's almost an entire geotherm of power right here. He got a little unlucky on the bounce in some ways, that he didn't get to hit everything, but he did get the important stuff. So he's still in a pretty good spot, I would think. Alright. Soren has to use another mutiny, which consumes the mutiny that he threw at Gameslayer the first time. So, just a little bit of a back and forth there. Nothing too crucial being played out. Soren is well ahead in upgrades. Gameslayer only recently hit 4. He hasn't even established all of his buildings from hitting HQ level 4. And Soren's pushed on to 5. He's kind of ignoring debt for the time being. With this overload, he's choosing to make the money anyway. And whoa, perpetual motion. Well, that's interesting. What are you going to value this at, as both players? It would let Gameslayer sell significantly more power, and it would save Soren potentially a lot of debt. But he's going to have to pay a lot of debt in the first place in order to pick it up. Alright, it is going to go to Soren for $24,000. I can see it saving him that amount of money long term. You can see these electrolysis reactors back down to 0.3 power a second. Everything else will be running much, much cheaper. And so that will likely... I mean, Gameslayer's almost to the point of making money from power anyway. But it might reduce the viability of these double geos long term. The fact that that perpetual motion auction came up at all. Gameslayer does hit the best power surge he can against Soren's glass. Not the end of the world for Soren, who does still have 3 claims available, and needs to be moving into something to make a little bit of money, I would think. Maybe a little extra water would not be a bad idea for Soren. You can see he's got 2 tiles committed to water already, but I'm wondering if that's enough on this map in particular. He is just going to add to more reactors down, and I'm worried about that. Without a little bit more water being secured, he's going to quickly push that to the point of not being usable with so many reactors down between him and his opponent. Let's go ahead and take a look at what the Offworld is like this game. It is not great. Food at 477 is definitely usable. Kim's at 450, also definitely worth paying attention to. So those are the two resources we'll expect to be sent the most, as long as both players spot them. After that, you're really looking at water at 363. So I really do not like the fact that Soren, it looks like, has not chosen to pick up a third water tile. He had access to at least another medium water, and he chose not to go after it. And we'll see what happens with that this game. He's just consuming so much of it right now that it could come back and hurt him. Gameslayer, on the other hand, it does look like he has gone ahead and secured 3 water tiles. He has pushed to HQ level 5. Soren has moved into a hacker array. And it'll be interesting to see if he can make really good use of that. He is just hacking glass for the time being, but oh man, I'm worried about Soren, actually. These reactors had to get turned off because water is so expensive. Now, Soren kind of forced that situation, but he doesn't have as much water coming in as Gameslayer does. He's not doing anything too creative either. It's just kind of this network virus that he was trying to make work, but he gave up on it pretty quickly in order to dive into this shortage. Just the network virus play, plus the shortages, don't really work all that well unless you're using them together. Maybe if that had been a water short, he would have been in a much better spot, and he could actually really punish Gameslayer with this. Alright. Glass shortage is coming in, though. It will be some money over to Soren, but he's not too heavily committed into it at the moment. Only about 100 glass stored up, but that's partially because he did go ahead and get that Offworld down. No adrenaline boosts available, but already being established into that Goon Squad at Offworld market can definitely make a difference. It should be noted, Goon Squads already cost $20,000 this game.
I hate those filthy bandits.
Mrs. Soren is going to be paying the price for his hacker array at this point, I think. Just this basic, you've spent so much money on Goon Squads, you drove them to be very expensive, when there is still a very cheap tool to fight back against them. So it'll be interesting to see if this Offworld market truly pans out as well as he's hoping it will. I expect it will. We all know Offworld markets are very, very powerful. But this is going to be one of the weakest possible scenarios for the Offworld market that we could possibly see, with prices only kind of adequate rather than strong, and strong tools used to be able to fight them with the network virus, the dynamite, and the mutiny. We'll see. We'll see what happens. It should also be noted that Soren has managed to push himself into D levels of debt. And that is going to lock him out of the black market until he pays some of it down. He has managed to do that and start a launch and transition into food production during a dust storm. Not really what you're looking for. As you can see, Gameslayer actually had his food turned off for a significant period of time there, but could still work out for Soren long term, I guess. Alright, shortage on chems actually on the way. Soren's going to spot that. Maybe think about a transition on over to chems on a couple of his tiles. They shouldn't be too bad to make right now. Obviously, knocking down that chem price could actually be quite beneficial for him since he does have the first Offworld established. But Gameslayer has gotten into his own Offworld. It will start launching food right now, and that's maybe a bit of a mistake. Maybe the players didn't spot the cheap water price that is available, or maybe even the chem price. Chem's obviously much better than food to spend at the moment. Water much better to send. It'll be interesting to see which player can actually identify those things this game. Alright. More black market raining down from Soren. Hitting his opponent's food, definitely a good idea. Unfortunately, he didn't hit all 3, but you take what you can get when you're getting aggressive like that. And a claim auction has come up. That presents an interesting conundrum for Soren, because he basically, if Soren picks this up, he basically has to pay all of that in cash. It's not actually debt that he gets to pay because his debt is so high. Wow, $28,000 for that claim. I don't know if I like that on Soren. I felt like he was at a point where he might have had to let it go. You see, he's back in that D rating that he can't afford. And Soren's kind of put himself almost on the back foot here. It's like he has to get another Offworld down instead of this glass furnace. Glass furnace is almost what it feels like. He's securing a little more water, which is nice, finally. But it's a low, excuse me, instead of a medium, which is very awkward. And I don't know, I feel like Soren's opening the door for Gameslayer to get on back into this one. He does pop a dynamite on a water pump of Gameslayer's, which is kind of nice. That cuts him off from water for an extended period of time. But Gameslayer, with just one launch, has pushed to 60% of what he requires to buy Soren, because Soren's stock price is just so cheap. On top of that, Gameslayer is going to be the first one to get into that second Offworld market, and Gameslayer is the one making the chem transition right now. These are all things that were available to Soren, but that he just didn't manage to push into. Maybe too much playing around with the hacker array. Maybe too much black market going on instead of self-investment and development, but it feels like Gameslayer is the one who's pushed pretty solidly into the lead at this point this game. That's not what Soren's going to have been looking for. Alright. What are we looking at? Soren at about only $13,000. I don't know where all his money is going at this point. Were they committed to Goon? Was it committed to Goon Squads? Was it committed to other black market effects that maybe it shouldn't have been? Is it just all flying into debt to try and stay alive? Because I feel like that's what it might be. And I definitely don't like that if that's the case. Soren had put himself into a position where his stock price was very, very, very low. And one of the very few ways you can take advantage of that is by very quickly securing your own stock. Just get it. Just get it all, even. If it's that cheap, go ahead and secure it, then pay down the debt at that point, and you can be in a much better spot, potentially. And he's gotten some. He's gotten enough bought up that Gameslayer can't just flat out kill him, but I don't see any other advantage that he's sitting on right now, besides this random hacker array. Alright, Gameslayer, I want to see you starting to get aggressive against this guy. Identify the fact that Soren is spending so much time in D debt and is struggling with that, and get aggressive against it. Just make him defend himself. And Gameslayer could put himself in a position to pretty easily win this game. Also worth noting that Gameslayer has 2 hacker arrays ready to go. One of them surplusing glass right now, the other one it looks like it is sitting idle. Whereas Soren has scrapped his old hacker array instead of scrapping out of glass, potentially. And that likely is supposed to be an Offworld before too long, but Offworld's very expensive still for Soren. He's a good 15,000 away from establishing it. And I don't know, guys. He's back in that D level of debt again. He can't purchase anything. He can't use the fact that he is a scavenger. Just struggling quite a lot to stay alive this game. Never really got an advantage off this silicon monopoly either. I mean, he established this silicon monopoly, but then he always forced himself into a position where he was keeping that glass price kind of low, so he never really punished Gameslayer with it, and that's not what you're looking for, really, when you're going to establish a monopoly like that. Drag that glass price up as much as you can, and then force Gameslayer into glass. Make him make glass, and then you hit him. Then you hit him with your silicon monopoly, and you've put yourself into a great spot. And that just never happened this game. So there were all these like minor things that Soren did at the start of the game that he needed to carry through the entire game, and none of that happened. None of that happened anywhere. And that, combined with the massive amount of debt he took on, getting these minor advantages, has left him in a very awkward position of nearly getting bought out by his opponent. Like, Gameslayer's at 80% despite having to purchase 7 of Soren's stock, just because Soren's stock is so cheap. It's worth nothing. That's nothing to him right now. I mean, it's what? It's less than... Yeah, it's $250,000, $260,000. And basically dropping by the second with this interest rate that just hit not too long ago. There's the red button. Gameslayer, are you going to take it? And that's game number 1. On over to Gameslayer in our best of 3. Get out of here. Termination paper. I think we covered most of that while it was happening. Soren had a distinct lead and kind of threw the game away is what it felt like, with just so much debt without properly following through a lot of the things that he set up that game. And also by not focusing enough on his Offworld. Soren's Offworld launches were very weak compared to Gameslayer's. I mean, you can see Gameslayer got off more launches and made only a little more money. But a big factor is that Gameslayer is going to have spent less on the resources that he was sending. As long as he was sending them at the appropriate moments. You can see he made an effort to move through food, chems, and water, all of which were viable, as we pointed out, rather than Soren just sitting on food. Yeah, it can get so... Not a real win, because he never went to D rating. Alright. Yeah, D rating can put a lot of pressure on a player, where suddenly you can't make all the actions you want to, and so that can throw you off pretty significantly through the rest of the game, and slow down everything else you're trying to do. And so I can definitely see that causing problems for Soren in that game. Just letting debt get too out of control, and not properly regulating it in the early game. Pretty much what took Soren out there. Alright guys, we don't need to sit around, we don't need to wait, let's just hop on into game number 2.